Dear chess friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. It's been a while, I haven't published any opening files, so finally here's the time and I'm coming with my new opening work, which as usual you can find on my webpage ask-avrukh.com. So this time I was inspired by famous chess author who published two very well established books with quality chess publishing house, Nikos Nitirlis, and by following his Twitter account and his weekly opening thread, by the way, highly recommended, I found this amazing idea and I decided to expand and develop into my opening file. So we are talking today about the opening which called Two Knights. Basically it's I would say it's like Italian, Giuoco Piano, like you know guys, probably it's the most popular opening nowadays, e4, e5, on the Grandmaster level. Well, you know, Grandmasters, they are worried about Berlin a lot, so they're like about, I would say 10 years ago, they switched, like more and more games we see with Italian, so it's number one choice for white. And of course, there are a lot of developments with the main move, bishop c5. It's truly like develops every week. There are some new ideas for either side. From this perspective, it would be a very nice idea to have move knight f6 in your repertoire. I think like avoid massive theoretical knowledge. And well, the problem with knight f6 that you have to know knight g5. And I have one file already on my webpage which covers d5, ed5, knight a5, bishop b5, c6, dc6, bc6, the main line, which is actually also very popular. There are many developments. Recently, what white is trying, like mainly bishop d3 here. A lot of interesting games, fascinating play. The drawback that I see, you have to know the theory here for black very, very well. There is no room for any mistakes here, because not only we sacrifice the pawn, but also our knight on a5 is misplaced. So one mistake without compensation, and practically white is getting very big advantage. Now, so here's the new idea, guys. Instead of playing knight a5, there is a move b5, which considered to be suspicious. I know, like until recent times, but according to Nikos, it works, and I can confirm this after my analysis as well. So here's the file for you, and I think it would be like if you trying to avoid some massive theoretical developments and have a surprising weapon as well. You have this b5 move, and it's not as complicated as knight a5. I think that black play is pretty much straightforward. So hopefully that will be a nice weapon for you to add to your repertoire. Now, what you can, I would like to emphasize what you can win, what you can gain by playing knight f6 move order. Let's say white decides to refrain from knight g5, from aggressive knight g5, but just go for so-called slow Italian d3. In this case, you can choose, you have a nice choice. Three options like h6, something that covered in my files on my webpage. You can find aggressive approach, h6, d6, g5, this kind of strategy. A little bit risky, but well, there are a lot of games to kind of already that it's pretty established system, and you know, many strong players playing this. So this is one interesting choice. You can go and play bishop e7 and study the system with bishop on e7 instead of bishop c5. I don't think this move is worse than bishop c5. It's just another setup. A little bit resembles maybe Ruy Lopez, like Chigorin systems, maybe. Well, the main idea also like d6, knight a5 at some point. In my opinion, very reliable system, and just not as trendy as bishop c5. That's the only drawback, but I'm not sure even it's a drawback. And finally, we can go bishop c5 and switch to bishop c5 lines with advantage that we avoided some theoretical ideas. For instance, here it's important to understand, if you start with bishop c5, Then black, you have to study, besides move d3 that would transpose into knight f6, you have to study b4, which is Evans' gambit. Yeah, black is doing not so bad, it's true. You have to study castle, knight f6, d4, so there is one new gambit here. Again, if you study, it should be fine, although I have seen quite a few games recently by Uzbekistan Grandmaster prodigy Abdusatorov. He has been playing, I think, mainly in Blitz games, but still definitely deserves some attention. And of course, c3. So probably the main headache, I would say, for black players: c3, knight f6, d4. So instead of d3 slow Italian, so there is d4 after e4. First of all, cd4, bishop b4, the gambit lines. And it seems like recently quite a few games with knight d2 on the very high level as well. I have seen MVL playing this, also some like really strong players. So it's a pawn sacrifice. There is like after knight e4, d5. Interesting compensation. I remember I analyzed this at some point. I got the feeling that white is not worse, but it was not very dangerous for black. Nowadays there are some new ideas. And finally, maybe the biggest deal is like the line which has been quite popular recently. This is the move e5. And in this case, after d5, bishop b5, knight e4, cd4, we get this theoretical variation where usually it's bishop b6, but there have been a lot of games recently. Aronian is a big expert in this line, has been playing this for quite some time. Well, this line is very complicated, very complicated, very double-edged, very like strategically complex fight. Definitely requires serious study for black. So, guys, that's the advantage of starting with knight f6. Now, of course, you need to know knight g5. This is number one question. And with d3, you can choose. There are like 3 choices. Now, in this specific video and this specific file, we'll focus on knight g5. I think if knight g5, you know what to do, then you are open to choose like 3 moves, and you can make your own mind. Like there is h6 system on my file, just would like to remind you. So d5, e5, b5. What is happening in this position? It's sorry, I haven't checked when it was played for the first time, but it was kind of like well-known idea. So well, knight a5 is like the main move, and then it's kind of like, well, it was well established for some time that knight d5, of course, knight f7 doesn't work. There is knight d4 and there is b5, but they are all kind of like refuted with precise play. So something has changed recently and noticed by Nikos, and I'm grateful for him for that. So what is happening here after d5? The main move, and it's also kind of like well known, many strong players play, it's bishop f1. Now, I analyze here every move available for white in this position, every bishop move. So it includes bishop b3, bishop e2, bishop f1, of course bishop b5, and as well as dc6. So you can find everything in my file. So here I would like to mention how the play goes here after bishop b5, which seems like once you see this position for the first time, that's the very first question, right? So of course we take queen d5. Now bishop c6. Well, knight c3, we take queen g2, so that's equal material already. We have this endgame, for instance, queen f3, knight f3, bishop d7. Well, that's already equal amount of pawns here, so we regain the material. Black is perfectly fine in this position. So I wanted to show you one interesting line where, let's say, bishop c6 played, queen c6, and white goes queen f3. So that's the most interesting move here. Now, after castle, we get tremendous compensation thanks to the diagonal a8, h1, and of course bishop pair, and super powerful bishop on b7. No questions about this. Knight f3. We play queenside castle. So the pawn on a5 is not hanging. Knight c3, g5, and it's just super powerful initiative. So here we have a game, one game from 2020, like h5, h4, h3, a lot of ideas. That's a dream. That's a dream. That's idea for black, how to get a massive compensation here. Now, instead of queen f3, like going back here with this line, queen f3 is, in my opinion, more challenging. We have to play e4, and now queen b3. So f7 is under attack, and well, that's a remarkable position. and we have no time to protect. We have no time to protect. We have to develop initiative, and h6 comes. But by the way, I suggest also bishop c5 as an interesting alternative. Now the idea is very simple. First of all, if queen takes, we play king d8, and well, there is one game here. Knight h3 was played. Seems like the only possible move. And after e3, g2 is hanging, and black is taking over basically. Black is taking over. Queen c2 is hanging, and so on. So that's great for black. Now the main line, definitely after h6 to play knight f7, bishop e6, knight e5, and bishop b3, knight c6, bishop c2. So very interesting game, end game with a lot of compensation, of course, thanks to our bishop pair and like better coordinated pieces. White still struggling with queenside development. Let's say knight c3, bishop d3. So it's a nice compensation. With precise play, white can maintain some kind of like balanced position, but I'm not. I would definitely prefer to be on black side. Now that's one line with bishop b5. Now finally, let's move to the main line, which is bishop f1. That's the line that's considered to be a refutation. Now I would like to mention that knight g4 considered to be the main move. You can find a lot of games, probably more than 1,000 games here, with a kind of like line which, well, at least players who play knight g5, they know this line: c3, knight d5, c takes d4, queen g5, bishop b5, king d8, castle. And I think according to like latest developments in this line, it's used to be better for white. It's still better for white, although from time to time I see some games by pretty decent players. Maybe there are some developments, but our idea actually to play knight d5. Our idea actually to play knight d5, and so that's a pawn sacrifice. Obviously, white can take bishop b5, and I believe it's the main move. Bishop b5, bishop b7. And now we get this position. In some way, it resembles Marshall Gambit, like from the main line of Ruy Lopez. So we sacrifice the pawn, and now we play for quick development. Obviously, right now, knight on g5 is hanging. So what is the main line here? What is the critical line? The critical line is d4. It's, by the way, the move suggested by Wesley So in his chessable course for white. So he believed after d4 it's advantage. But the theory evolves, especially with the correspondence games. We can see a lot of developments. So what is happening here? We take on d4 and castle. Now, by the way, I would like to mention that queen d4, there is no time for queen d4. Queen e7 check is very nice here. Then after queen e4, actually this endgame appears to be very dangerous, like just, I would say clearly better for black. We just won knight d4. Knight d4, so after castle, knight d4. And if he gives up the bishop, then knight b4 is another problem with pawn on c2 and knight on e4 hanging. So we regain the material, and then we have initiative, bishop pair, everything. So black is doing really great. Now queen d4 is not working, so castle. Now what d4 has accomplished, now knight on g5 is protected by the bishop. Bishop e7, I'm sorry, bishop e7. So just normal developing move, attacking the knight. So queen h5 seems like a critical move. Now instead of queen h5, white plays knight f3, so we just castle here, and let's say after knight d4, knight takes d4, queen d4, we have this very much like martial spirit compensation. Martial spirit compensation with our minor pieces being in the attack. There are ideas, obviously, like we are threatening to move the knight, and so on. Knight b4 is in there, and so on. Full compensation here, in my opinion. Very interesting, active play. Now, queen h5, what is happening with queen h5? We have to play g6, queen h6. So we basically cannot castle kingside, but not a big deal. We prepare queenside castle after queen d7. Now, complicated position, and I shared my analysis, shared my thoughts. Also, like there was a line from Nikos, Twitter thread, like from correspondence game. Now, I also noticed recently played a game of Russian Grandmaster Yesepenko, who is like Russian prodigy. So if he played, I know he's a very good theoretician. So he played against, I think I'm not sure, but the player from which country, Nigmatov, or maybe Uzbekistan. So it was a very interesting game, and it's some kind of like model game, I would say. Knight d2, a6. Important. Let's check what happens with the bishop. Bishop a4 seems logical. f6, attacking the knight. Knight f3. Knight b6 comes with the tempo. That's why a6 bishop a4, kind of like useful for black. We have this idea knight b6. Not only we are attacking bishop on a4, we also protected d4 pawn, bishop b3, queenside castle. So looks like fantastic position for black. At least it's fascinating chess, equal material, queenside castle, very good development for our pieces. Not surprising in the game, black took over very quickly. Rook e1, knight d5, very precise, by the way, very precise play by a Russian teenager here. Knight a4, knight a5, eliminating the bishop. Knight takes b3, knight takes b3, and knight b4. So c2 appears to be problematic, hard to defend with all the pieces, and black already have a very big advantage. Black already has a very big advantage in this position. So this is the line. That's a couple of like interesting points that I would like to mention in this video. So-called promotion of this variation. Guys, you can find full analysis on my webpage, askavrukh.com. I'll put the link in the description, so you're welcome to check this. As if you still remember, guys, it's been a while I released the videos. It's for 3 different levels: expert level, beginner level, and intermediate level. So you can like download the file that you prefer. Now it's covered. It's just there is a little bit difference of in the coverage. Now like advanced level covered the most. Now, if you enjoy this and you want to stay updated, please subscribe to my channel, hit the notification button, and comment on this line. I'm very curious to hear your opinion. Maybe you know something. That's how I get my news, my ideas today. So you have, you notice I emphasized this like a few times, Nikos. So that's where I got this idea, to be honest. And I decided to develop this into like very interesting file. Guys, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you on my next videos. Thanks for watching.